talk about my little country, Hungary. And as you can see, I am wearing the Hungarian colors: red, white, and green. I lived through this. You can't learn in a book. I lived through communism, I lived through the Hungarian Revolution. These stories will help you better understand my beautiful little country and the tragic circumstances of our past, as well as our undying spirit to fight for freedom and justice. We gave to the world many famous people. We have 13 Nobel Prizes and 482 Olympic medals. The classical composer Franz Liszt, the Rubik Cube, Béla Bartók, Steven Spielberg, Professor Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, Andrew Weiner, the movie producer who made Rambo, the Terminator, Adolf Zukor, founder of the Paramount Picture, Calvin Klein, Estée Lauder, Drew Barrymore, Adrian Brody, Tony Curtis, Zsa Gabor, Goldie Hawn, Béla Lugosi, William Shatner, John Westmuller, Paul Newman. We are a little country, but we contributed very much to this world. Starving for excellence, and I hope that's what you guys are going to do when you go out in life. Starve for excellence. And Hungary lost 72% of her territory, 2/3 of our country. We lost it to Romania, Ukraine, Austria, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. In order for you to understand the magnitude of this, just imagine what would happen if you had lost 70% of your country. You would lose Hawaii, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Florida, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, Nevada. All this would be gone, wiped out of your life forever. How would you feel about that? Would that be an injustice? Yeah, that's how we felt. Imagine that foreigners would take over your place. The English language would be banned, and you would be discriminated against as unwanted minority in your own country. I wrote a song about that because I happen to be a songwriter also.
Freedom should be never compromised. Freedom.
I experienced the Hungarian Revolution. I was there when history was writing itself with blood on the streets of Budapest. The place where we live now, Hungary, was called Pannonia. Later, it was occupied by the semi-nomadic Huns. Remember Attila the Hun? Yeah. Hungary was recognized as a Catholic apostolic kingdom under Saint Stephen in the year of 1000. In the 13th century, after we were defeated by the Mongolian invasion, we built lots of castles, strong stone castles, to defend the country against the second Mongolian invasion. That's why when you're traveling in Hungary, and I hope that you will, because Hungary is a very beautiful country, and Budapest is a very romantic city, so maybe one day you and your family will visit my beautiful little country. The revolution of 1848 brought many civil rights reforms. In 1914, the assassination in Sarajevo of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, heir to the throne, and his beautiful wife Sophie, triggered the breaking out of World War I. And when the war was over, since Hungary was on the losing side, we got punished like no other country in history. We lost the entire Transylvania. Hungarians still live in fear in some occupied territories. Its beautiful snow-capped mountains, pine forests, and Dracula's castle. It hurts. Then came World War II, and the Hungarian government of Nicholas Horthy didn't allow the Nazis to deport and execute the Jewish people until 1944. My father had a tremendous integrity. He never joined the Nazis and he never joined the communists. He was very courageous because defying the system could have brought death to him and to us. Back to history. After 2 months of siege of Budapest, the Red Army liberated us and they simply forgot to go home. We were stuck with the Soviet occupation until we finally had enough, and we revolted against the oppression in October of 1956. This was a tactic of the communist government. Everybody spied on everybody. That's pretty smart, huh? This way they knew exactly what was going on. I remember it was October, freezing cold in Budapest. And even children, little children, made Molotov cocktails and threw them on the Russian towns to blow them up. But most of them died there on the street. They were 8 years old, 12 years old children, and they were all fighting. The whole country was fighting. And we were expecting the free world to help us. The radio station, Free Europe, promised us that help is on its way. They encouraged us, saying, "Hold out, guys, we're coming, we're all with you, we'll be helping you." Every hour, every minute, as our brave heroes held out, saying, "The Americans are here, they're coming." But sadly, America decided not to get involved in this revolution. Our freedom fighters couldn't hold out any longer. There were too many Russians. Our people slowly died. The revolution was crushed, and we lost. The streets of Budapest was littered with thousands of bodies. There were millions of candles in the streets of Budapest, on the sidewalk, in the windows and doorways, for the freedom fighters who lost their lives. This is why you should be thankful to live in a country where there is freedom. It is a beautiful gift, so cherish it. Because freedom is a very important. October 1956. We were fed up with dirty politics. Like a roaring tiger, we broke off our chain. Bloodstained flag of freedom, flapping in the rain. The revolution was crushed, and we lost. You guys, you are our future. In a few years, you might become leaders out there with power of decision and the possibility to inspire others. You may become role models. You may be able to change the world around you. So it is extremely important for you to understand now how freedom and the respect of each other is important in life. In 1989, finally the Iron Curtain fell down and we got what we wanted, freedom. I'd like to talk a little bit about the communism without trying to brainwash you or so that I would like you to have your own conclusion. I am just one person here, but I lived through it. And keep in mind that what you learn in books is very often different from what happens in real life. There are three main characteristics in communism. Number one, all property is owned by the community, so there is no private ownership. Okay, now imagine that you have a house, 2 cars and three-bedroom house. And suddenly one day, you live in Hungary, and suddenly one day the secret police is knocking on your door and say, well, whose cars are out there? Oh, that's my car. Well, it's not your car anymore. We're confiscating it. We're taking it away. What? This is my car. I have the papers here. I paid off. You can't take away my cars. Sorry, you have no choice. Now, from now on, everything belongs to the state. Either you let us take your cars or you go to jail. So that doesn't look so good anymore, right? No, another time the secret police is knocking at your door again. And, whose house is this? Oh, this is my house. Okay, we're taking your house away. Well, wait a second. My grandparents worked their butt off to give me that house. How can you take it away? Well, you can live in one room. You have a 3-bedroom house. You can live in 1 bedroom, and we're going to put 2 families on 2 other bedrooms. What? So now you're going to wind up with a bunch of people with running kids, sharing your kitchen, sharing your bathroom, and paying rent in your own house because everything belongs to the communities. Communism. How do you feel about that one? Okay. Factories were taken away. Imagine that you're a factory worker. In America, when you work in a factory and you want your kids to be schooled, then maybe you put a bunch of effort in so you can have more money, you can earn more money, or you can have 2 jobs so you can have more money to school your kids, right? So you have incentive to work. You're going to give your best shot at work. In communism, everybody gets the same pay. There's no incentive, so why should you work hard? It's the same pay, right? So people don't care. They come late to work, they play cards, they read the newspaper at work, at lunch job, and when the supervisor passes, they hide what they were doing and they look like they were busy working, but nobody's working. So what happens in this case? The production goes down, the quality goes down. There's a total chaos. Nobody cares. This is not working. It's nice on paper, right? But it's not possible to realize it in real life. You take the incentive away, there's nothing left. Since everything belonged to the state, everybody was stealing. Well, it's ours, it's to the state, we're not hurting anybody, so let's take the supplies home, let's take everything home. The whole country was stealing. It brought up a moral issue for me. How would this affect the new generation growing up like this? Immoral? And I was very worried. But fortunately, the Hungarian new generation grew up very healthy and very nice and good, decent people, because there is another factor in life, family and family values. So they learned that certain things were not good, even if people did it, and they learned that stealing from the state, actually, it's not the same thing than stealing from your best friend. Now the second point of communism is the distribution of income is to each is according to his or her needs. This put the state in charge of organizing every aspect of the economy. In other words, somebody who happens to be the state decides for you what to do, where to do it, when to do it, and how to do it. Now, do you call that freedom? Number 3, communism is a classless social system. Before the communist regime, there were different classes who enjoyed different privileges. That's not right either. There were nobility, aristocrats, intellectuals and high functioners, middle class people, and the working class, the blue-collar class. As you know, the middle class is always the strength of a country, and the working class is a backbone of society, working hard for you. Nobility, to me, is vanity. Even though my family comes from old nobility, that's not my fault. I must admit that it's basically useless. Communism formed his own class system for the communist political leaders. So here we go again, class systems is forming. This was a new kind of privileged people, a new kind of aristocracy, if you want, who ruled over everyone in the name of the people. Corruption was ramping. Corruption is everywhere. People are the same everywhere. Most of them driven by power. But when this power is centralized, because the state makes all the decisions for you, then it's easy to abuse that power. That's why the communist leaders, they abuse their power. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, the new leaders, the new communist leaders who came up from nowhere, were unschooled, uneducated, incompetent people. Not really ready for leadership. Why? Because intellectuals and leaders from the previous regime were all in prison or labor camps. Being intellectual was a sin under the communist regime. The intellectuals were persecuted as enemies of the regime. Because when you were intellectual, you knew that this regime is not working. Hello? Therefore, a bunch of uneducated, incompetent people were running the country. There was a chaos. Nothing worked. Personal freedom. Now, do you call that freedom? I remember as a child, we slept with a bundle by our bed in case the secret police comes to our door, so we have at least a toothbrush or something, medication or what we need to take away. If we were taken away to the prison or to the labor camp or execution, we were living in fear. I remember as a child, many times I heard steps on the hallway, in the corridor, coming, and it was the secret police. We knew, we were trembling, we were scared. And the boots are coming and getting louder and louder, and they stop at our door, and then they go to the next door, to the neighbors. And the next day, the neighbors were gone, forever. We never knew what happened to them. All this was under the Stalinistic regime, you have to understand that. Stalin was a cruel man. Stalin was a sadistic butcher. 60 million people were executed by this man. The right number is probably 20 million, but even 1,000, even 100 would be too much. Even one single life lost would be too much for personal opinions. It's unacceptable. Under the communist regime, food was distributed. You just could not go to the store and buy anything. Again, it's under the Stalinistic regime. You could not just go to the store and buy anything. For instance, meat was distributed on Saturdays. So a Friday night, we started to get in line, and families rotated. They brought chairs to sit by the butcher shop outdoors. We were saying stories to each other, and the morning when the butcher shop opened, imagine what kind of meat we had. We had the leftovers from the good meat that was sent to Russia. We only had the leftovers, like brown meat, old, smelly. There were disgusting chicken necks, chicken feet, chicken heads. Those were the kind of meat we had, and only once a week. So guys, be very thankful to live in America. The same thing was bread. Bread was distributed, and we had to stay in long lines to get bread. I remember one day mother got hold of a piece of liver, and that was a big deal. We had liver! That was a miracle. Shopping, ladies, in the communist countries were not fun at all. Here, if you go and you want, let's see, red shoes, you go to any store and you have a bunch of red shoes. You have hundreds of red shoes to choose from on the internet. In our country, there were two colors, black and brown. And there were two styles when I grew up. There was shoes that came up to like low shoes, and then that came up to your ankle. That was the two styles. Nothing more. Skirts, if you wanted to have skirts, there was brown, gray, and black, and all practically the same way. At school, we were all wearing uniforms this way. We were all equal, and we looked all the same. And that was a good. I like that. Here in America, you have these beautiful displays, storefront displays. Especially on Christmas. It's a feast for the eyes. There in Hungary, in the storefront, there were boring things, especially for a child, like brown bags full of groceries or just household items. Really not exciting. One day, I remember, I was walking home from school, and I saw something unbelievable in the display, in the store display. There was this little red vinyl, shiny vinyl. I never saw vinyl before, and the red was such a beautiful color. We lived in a country there was no colors. It's red, shiny vinyl, and it was a little dog, but it was a purse shaped like a dog. I was standing there mesmerized. I ran home and I said, Mom, Dad, I want that little purse for Christmas. And I brought my parents to watch that little doggy in the window. And when my parents saw the price, they looked at each other. They shook their head and they said, Ildiko, that little doggy would cost your father's 2 months of salary. We can't afford it. So I was sad. I have to tell you that my father was a lawyer, an exceptional man who spoke 8 languages, and his salary was so small that we could not afford that little dog. Actually, my father walked in the winter with holes in his shoes, and I could hear the water slushing in his shoes. But Christmas came around, and guess what? I had that little purse under the Christmas tree. And my father walked one more year with a hole in his shoes. That's love. Even in the communist countries, love is important. Speaking of Christmas tree, we had to sneak in the Christmas tree because there was religious restriction. You could not practice your religion or you were looked really bad. It was a very, very, you got on the blacklist as a churchgoer or synagogue goer. You could not practice your own religion. Housing was a problem. As I told you earlier, what happened to that home. For us, our apartment was slashed into. One family, us, we got the bathroom, but no kitchen. And the other family on the other side had the kitchen, but no bathroom. So what people do in this case, they bathe in tubs and they sponge bathe. But we were very lucky to have a bathroom, so we took a bath once a week. Why once a week? Because my mother had to spend 3 hours to cut the kindling and to make the fire, and rusty water came out of that water tank, so very often we had to bathe in dirty brown water, and it was disgusting. But you have already a glimpse of what happens in the communist countries. We got out, we were happy, and we are very happy to live in a beautiful country, and I would like you guys to go out in life and be thankful for what you have. We had to have special permission under the Stalin regime to go from one city to the other. You just couldn't, take off and go. There was paperwork to do. They wanted to know what was your business, why did you go there. So traveling was always a major problem. I never forget when I had the first orange or banana or chocolate. We didn't have those things. I had an aunt who sent us a package, and in that package there was also half a soap, a pink soap. I never saw a pink soap. She cut it in two because in another family got the other half. The soap was brown and smelled horrible. It was made, I don't know from what, but I saw this perfumed, pink, gorgeous piece of soap. It was like paradise for me. It was beautiful. The healthcare system was broken down just as much as anything else. Doctors did make house calls, that's true, but they neglected things because they were not paid, so who cares, right? I had a strep throat that they didn't recognize that it was a strep throat. And so I had a rheumatic fever and a heart problem for my life from that neglect as a child. I was neglected let down by the healthcare system. And I was not the only one. It was every person had major problems from not being cared for correctly. And when we finally got out of the country, after the revolution, there was a small little window where they were not that as strict. And we left everything behind to the communists, and they gave us a passport to leave the country. And my mother had some jewelry from back in time before the communism that she was hiding. And so she put those diamond rings in a dirty handkerchief, and she hid it in the train, in the bathroom behind a pipe. Now, in the trains, the bathrooms were not like in America that you sit. The bathroom was a hole on the floor So you can see the train running, you can see the earth running on that hole. That's where you had to go to the bathroom. And the paper was, of course, newspaper. That's what we used. So those bathrooms were horribly neglected and smelly and yucky. And so my mom put this dirty handkerchief behind the pipes. And the train was stalled and back and forth for hours, like 4 or 6 hours. It was just crazy. They were looking probably for somebody. The policemen came with the dogs and sniffing dogs, and my mother said, oh my God, if they find it, this dog is going to sniff it out. But it was worth it. So when finally we got to Austria, and we saw the first Austrian policeman coming in, we jumped in his neck. We were so happy. And we were celebrating, and my father said, you know what, kids? From now on, we don't have to whisper anymore. Because in the communist country, we had to whisper if we wanted to say anything about anything, the government or anything, because you could be jailed for criticizing the system. So, not whisper anymore, that's what freedom meant to me. And my mother went to the bathroom and she retrieved the dirty handkerchief with the beautiful diamond rings, and that formed our first egg nest in the free countries. That's how we survived in the first few weeks.